prices to the moon. The beers them waiting for the crash coming real soon. But the OG consultant watching, he's seen it all before. Over 40 years in the game, he knows the real score. Bull versus bear, a real estate fight. Peter Zalewski tell you who's wrong and who is right. In the Miami Candor investing club with no guess. He cuts through the noise and all of the mess. The Peter Zalewski Show. Big respect, OG in the game. Listen and learn the man's name. And up down. Peter Zalewski Show.
Happy Wednesday, Miami. This is the Peter Zalewski Show. I'm Peter Zalewski. I'm a condo consultant. I'm an expert witness, and I'm the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. If you're watching this podcast live, that means it's 4 o'clock on Wednesday, and I am going to be introducing you to somebody you need to know. It doesn't matter if you live here, if you just moved here, or you're thinking about coming here. This is somebody you need to basically put on your radar, and if and when you need that type of service, you should consider reaching out to them. Who do I have this week? I have Clarita Rosa. She is a veteran in the real estate world, especially on the title side. Title, escrow, all of that type of stuff. The middle person, if you will, in a real estate transaction. Clarita's carved out an hour to spend with me to kind of walk us through the process. She's going to tell us a little bit about her background, and she's going to give us some insight as to what is going to happen in the title world as we go forward. And I'm going to see if I can tap into some of that intelligence she has about blockchain. Some of you might be crypto people. You love the blockchain and everything is spelled out. Well, that's effectively what real estate title is. They're able to go back, they look at everything. What happened here? What happened there? What did blah, blah, blah. And that's what blockchain effectively is replicating, at least from my perspective, but she's the expert and we're going to ask her about that. So all that being said, let me go ahead and introduce Clarita Rosa of Candor Title. And by the way, check out her website, candortitle.com. What's going on, Clarita? Thanks for making the time.
Hi, Peter. How are you? Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for having me, Peter.
Now, Clarita, when people hear title, they're thinking, this is going to be a boring ass conversation, but I want them to stop right there. Do not turn off this podcast and stick with us because Clarita's got some great stories, including during the Great Recession. Remember, you all remember robo-signing and 60 Minutes and the news was covering this and the what was it, the rocket docket and all kinds of crazy stuff was going on. Clarita was actually in the trenches. She's been here for quite some time. She's seen the ebbs and the flows. And at the same point, she's been able to kind of keep it all tranquila, keep it all nice and level. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. Clarita, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself just so we can kind of, we'll start Google Earth out and then we'll kind of drill down and we'll get into the title world and why it's important for them, if they're a buyer and or a seller, kind of understand the way this game plays. Maybe they're an investor and they're shopping around and maybe there's some services you can offer, whether it's escrow or anything else. So Clarita, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Alrighty. So I started in the business in 1979. Okay. I worked for a local medium-sized law firm that represented a savings and loan. I was there that was where my career began. For 15 years, I worked in that law firm. I am a paralegal, and down the road, I went ahead and I worked for one of the biggest developers in the nation on the title side as well, and became somewhere in between. I became a licensed title agent, did that for another 15 years, and then I went to a local underwriter. Oh, actually, not a local underwriter. It's a global underwriter, and I worked on the direct operation. And fast forward, in 2022, coming out of COVID, I said, well, what am I going to do after, X amount of years servicing my clients and, just having a good time doing transactions, right? And seeing the down, the lows, and all the recessions and everything else that comes with it. So I decided to open up Candor. So we just celebrated a 3-year anniversary. So,
well done.
Yeah.
Congrats. You made it through the difficult time. The first year or two, you got to get it going. Once you hit cruising altitude, everything just sort of goes from there. But you have the advantage because you got, 4 decades of experience in this world. And more importantly, you understand the nuance, which is Miami-Dade County. I used to be a banking reporter when I used to write about banking. Inevitably, when an institution would come in from out of state, what they would have to do is they'd either have to set up a de novo bank, brand new, or they would have to acquire somebody. Inevitably, they acquire the Florida bank and they would sell off Miami-Dade County. Why? Because they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't work it into the structure. You're somebody who's able to play both in the U.S. side, which is going to be Fort Lauderdale, as well as the Miami side, which is distinctly different. And that's why I live here in Miami, because I love all aspects of this great community. So Clarita, give us some perspective about operating in Miami versus maybe some of the business you do outside of Miami-Dade County, whether it be Collier County, it'd be Broward County, Palm Beach County, or anywhere else in the state of Florida.
Well, we're licensed, Candor Title is licensed in the state of Florida. And as a title agent, I'm licensed in the state of Florida. So we're allowed to insure title for both lenders and owners anywhere in the state of Florida. And we do, okay? Mainly, I am in South Florida. Our office is situated in Coral Gables, right off of Ponce de Leon. And so what happens, like you said, Miami-Dade County, it's a term. And we have all different types of ordinances, and we have all different types of chains of title that maybe in other counties you won't see the history, reflecting what we see in Dade County. So basically what I believe is it's very important when you are going to purchase or sell, you need to create a good team. Select a good realtor, have a good lending financial advisor with you, and of course, select your title company. Many times, I am not an attorney, so the only time that I can facilitate seller's docs for a seller is when I am insuring title incident to the issuance of title insurance. So if I have a buyer and the seller has not retained an attorney, and they choose for us, Candor Title, to go ahead and facilitate their conveyance documents, then I can draft the documents incident to the issuance of title insurance. If I am not insuring title, I cannot draft legal documents because that would be against practicing law without a license. So we get calls all the time, and I try to educate everyone as I go along the way, explaining that to them. But many times we do, facilitate services for both buyers and sellers. Many times on the commercial side, we have attorneys that we have a buyer's attorney, we have a seller's attorney, and then we are in the middle, insuring title. So the buyer's, attorney is practicing law, doing all the drafting of all the contracts and everything else that needs to be done, memorandums and everything else that needs to be drafted. The seller's attorney is taking care of the seller for the conveyance and the final numbers, and we take care of insuring title. So that works very well. So I always say, the attorneys, I work with them in conjunction, and, some of them do compete, but others, the majority of them, they're my right hand. And when they don't want to do the title, I do, and they refer it to me.
And for anybody who's out there trying to understand exactly how it all works, maybe some of you are DIYers, do it yourself. The Realtor Association, they got sued, and they end up entering into some sort of settlement in which they decided going forward, whenever somebody walks in to either see a property or if a realtor is working with you, you got to sign a commission agreement saying who's paying who, and it's all kind of clear cut. There's no more of this old transaction broker, which was the default way. Whenever you called a realtor, maybe you were out drinking, maybe you were at some sporting event, you talked to somebody, oh, I'm a realtor, blah, 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 blah. I want to see a property. They would simply take you out there, and then the commission was going to be paid on the sell side. Now it all has to be laid out. So there's a side. You got a buy side and you got a sell side. Yeah. What Clarita does is she's in the middle. Her role is basically to act in the middle, act fair, do all the stuff that's necessary to bring it all together. So she ties all of it together. So if you're a DIYer and you're wondering, title, I'm not really sure how it worked, she's going to take the cash from the person who's paying, and she's going to give the keys from the seller once it all comes together. So once she signs off on it, it's legit, it's official, it goes forward, and then she takes paperwork and she goes and she records it with the government. The clerk of the court is what they call it in each particular county. Correct. And if you want to look up any information, it's all publicly available. It's all public records. Mm-hmm. So, Clarita, did I get anything wrong about that? Is that the general overview?
It's the general overview. But I do want to point something out for those who do it on their own and for those that do retain their realtors. what happens after the NAR settlement, which was the National Association of Realtors that got sued, and that was a big deal. I think it was over a year and a half ago or something.
Yeah, August of 2024.
Right. So, moving forward, what we have done is every time we get a contract, we look at that contract, we make sure that we do our own list of the critical date list, which is very important in every contract. We want to make sure that, everybody is adhering to those dates. And in addition to that, we always ask for the broker compensation agreement. And it could be a transactional broker doing both sides. It could be just, that listing agent representing the seller and the buyer's agent, which is the selling agent representing the buyer. But we always ask for the broker's agreement. And also, if the buyer is going to be paying for part of that commission because that was the agreement, then we need that exclusive agreement between the buyer and their agent, showing the amount that it's going to be deducted from, or added onto their cash to close. So that is very important. We in order for us, once we receive escrow, that goes into that private account, which is specifically for that particular file. Escrow is sacred. That money is held fiduciary responsibility, and it has to be applied. If you have a first deposit, sometimes you have a second deposit. And then we also receive, when we're ready to close, and we have a clear to close from the lender, if there's financing involved, we receive the money from the lender. And that's when that money also goes into the escrow account. Once we have all original documents fully executed on the seller side, the buyer side, the lender has given me the approval to disperse, that's when we pay off everyone. If the seller has encumbrances, an open mortgage, a federal tax lien, code violations, whatever it is that is encumbering on the property and we have to pay it off, we deduct those proceeds from the seller's net. And then we pay the seller the net. My function in life, and I always tell everyone, I need to make sure that the buyer that's purchasing has marketable and insurable title, and that nothing that has occurred prior to them receiving that ownership and conveyance is encumbering on their property. And of course, if there's a lender involved, I need to make sure that that lender has a first lien position. Sometimes there are junior liens that go with that financing structure. It could be a Home for Heroes program that they're in, or sometimes down payment assistance, and those have multiple sometimes junior liens. I need to make sure everybody is in their place, first place, second place, third place, and I am issuing a policy for the owner, subordinate to all those, liens that he acquired the property, that they're his liens, they're their debt, and then the lender that has all these liens in their respective position. So that's our function. And then we ask a whole bunch of questions. Are you married, not married? Is it homestead? Is it not homestead? But that's more on the legality of.
And speaking of legality, listen, Miami-Dade County's got a reputation for some sketchy stuff going on here. Doesn't matter what you look at, we're always top 5. Healthcare fraud and this fraud and that fraud. That ultimately puts the onus on you because the feds have put in place some order. I think it was back in 2016 or so, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, where if you're doing a deal, and you don't have financing, i.e. a bank who's going through and underwriting the would-be borrower, and the people are coming in with cash. I'm not talking about back in the 80s when they were bringing suitcases. I'm talking more so wiring cash. The feds requested that somebody like you, Clarita, you got to do the due diligence on their behalf. And when they come and knock in, you better have that information, generally speaking. So give us an idea. I remember it was $1 million at first, and it was Miami-Dade County, and it was Manhattan. But then it's since been expanded. I think it's like $300,000 now, and I think it's Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, any and all of that. Can you give people an idea, A, what they're doing, maybe B, why they're doing it, and C, can you actually sleep at night? Because if you're worrying, oh my God, I got to do this, I got to do that, there's more paperwork. Can you walk us through that and maybe some of the end results you've seen in what the decade that it first was introduced by the Treasury Department?
And you're absolutely correct. When it first started by the Treasury Department, and we refer to it as FinCEN, right?
FinCEN, yep.
Financial crimes investigation through,
Yep.
the Treasury Department of the government. So it started years ago, and that threshold was $1 million. And also the threshold was on purchases, an LLC, paying cash, and if there was no conventional financing. But if there was a private investor, you needed to report that because they do not go through the same procedures as a conventional financing loan.
Yes.
So
yes.
It started in Manhattan. Then they trickled down to Dade County.
Imagine that.
I'm telling you, it's paradise down here. Okay, and we love it because the energy just keeps you young. So, that we were included with Manhattan. Then it went out to LA. Then they came back, went back to Manhattan. They went through all the boroughs in New York, Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx.
Queens, Staten Island.
Right? So went through all the 5 boroughs in New York. And I believe that they expanded a little bit more out in California. Then eventually, fast forward, it went down, the threshold went down to 300. We went to the Tri-County area, including Broward and Palm Beach.
Which you better keep an eye on. Broward and Palm Beach, listen, Miami-Dade gets all the bad rap, but if you look at see who the feds ultimately indict and stuff, a lot of it's in Broward.
Exactly.
A lot of it is what I would say.
So, and then about 2 years ago, they extended it out to Hillsborough County in Florida.
Which is Tampa area.
Yeah, the Tampa area. So they've been adding on. But I have news for you. The laws have changed, and they were going to make a change December 1st, that now there is no threshold. No $300,000, no $1 million, $1, you need to report it. And not only under LLCs, but it also is going to affect if you purchase under a trust. So they lobbied, okay, the industry lobbied, and they moved the requirement through March 1st of 2026. So anyone that is purchasing starting March and you're closing, okay, you may be under contract, but if you close February 28th, you're good. But if you close on March 1st, you have to report. There is no threshold. It could be $1 and on the conveyance consideration, and you have to report if you're purchasing cash or with a private investor that is financing, and you're purchasing under an LLC or a trust. And our underwriters are, working with everyone because the responsibility falls on all title agents.
That's you. Are you sleeping at night knowing that this is the requirement? I mean, $1? Come on.
Okay. It falls under the title company, the closing agent, and we need to report. We need to gather all this information from everyone. And we all know how these LLCs have, they have shells and they have parent companies, and there's a reason why you do those LLCs. And but we need to get down to the nitty gritty and get everyone's information, and it has to be reported. And things will change if you're closing on March 1st of 2026. Either you provide the information or we can't close.
So what I'm saying and Clarita's not saying is I'm saying go long Bitcoin because people are not going to be able to use real estate. They're going to have to go into some other operation. I mean, to bad people. Obviously, we're speaking tongue in cheek, but it's a reality. Clarita, one of the things we always hear about in Florida when the market is humming is it could be like a rental. It could be like an Airbnb. Somebody will simply go on a vacant place and they'll try to rent it out. They'll try to sell it. Maybe land. What they'll do is they know somebody's had land in the family for 30 years or something. They'll go and they'll record a deed. They'll pay some kind of minimal doc stamps. They'll record it at the county. County says, okay, fine, pay us our fee. What's the value? And lo and behold, it's on the books. It's in the effectively the blockchain, the old school blockchain. And, what do you do in a situation like that? Because I'm always hearing about people, and I know people whose families have owned dirt, especially out in the Cape Coral area on the west coast of Florida, where it was massive investment going way back when. Even during the movie The Big Short, that's where a lot of it was taking place. But Clarita, how do you work a situation like that, especially if it's land and somebody can simply walk into the clerk of the court, they can pay the fee, they can record some sort of deed, and who knows any better until ultimately they go out and they try to take a financing out of it, and then, one thing leads to another.
Yeah. Well, first of all, vacant land is another topic, which is big red flag.
With good reason.
Yeah, it's big red flags. There is a lot of fraud with vacant land.